with the sheet behind him there, hiding all his man cave items, is Tony Playfair is going to be helping me with this. So I'm Alan Campbell, and I do not pretend to be an expert, but I have had quite a bit of experience, as it goes, with my Garmin Inreach satellite communicator. When I say my, I see Rob and maybe somebody else in here. We actually purchased this as a group about 7 years ago when it was cheaper. And turns out it was a good thing because we kind of got in on the ground floor of the Inreach, and it's helped us out from a price perspective, but more on that later. So we've been using it, Catfish Group guys have been using it for that length of time. And I thought it would be interesting to just do a little show and tell about it. And so what I've done is I put together a bit of a presentation, because as I did some work preparing for this, I learned about a number of other satellite communicators. So the device that allows you to communicate via satellite is called a satellite communicator. And there's about half a dozen brands out there now. There were always, 2 or 3, but it's kind of expanded. So it might be interesting, and I encourage you to do your own research. And so I'll do a presentation which gives you a kind of a survey and gives you some pointers as to where you can find information. And then I'll talk about my experience, and Rob, if you want to kick in too, because Catfish guys have used this collectively for the past several years. And then Tony is using the Inreach Mini, which is the new version, the newest version, I guess, of that device. So he'll follow up and talk about his experience with that, and then we'll have any question. Now, if you have a question as we go along, I think you probably should just maybe unmute yourself if it's important to know something at the time, but I will try and stop and check whether you have questions and so on. But it isn't a long presentation. I expect this is maybe going to take at most an hour, but we'll see how it goes. The presentation itself is shorter, but I think with questions and stuff, we might get to an hour. So with that, I'm going to do this magical thing here and share my screen, and share the sound as well when I get to something like that. And there. So do you see a picture? I hope.
Yep.
That's good. So what you're seeing is the rear view of Lynn Byer. She may or may not be on the call. And Lynn is on her way paddling out along the North Brooks. And if she keeps going that way, she'll get to Solander Island. And reason I chose this kind of looks a bit stormy, doesn't it? A little bit, I wonder if this is going to get worse or what's going to happen. And so what we found is that it does give great comfort, especially to people at home, but also to people on a trip, to have the capability of using satellite communications to inform yourself about conditions, i.e. weather, wind, and also to just get words back and forth between, which is by text message, with folks at home as to where you are, what you're doing, that kind of thing. So what we hope to cover here is the what, why, which, and how much of satellite communicators. So just very quickly, because I think this is generally understood, they don't require a cell signal. So these are devices that you would use where you can't get cellular communications. If you can get a cell signal, then certainly that's the thing to do. But outside and most of the west coast of the island and the coast north of there, except around communities, you tend not to have cell service. And so satellite communicators, as this diagram indicates, use the satellite network and go up, bounce it up and down again, and get back into the land-based system that way. So that's kind of a very brief. And this is if you haven't tried using your cell phone and been on trips, this is a cell map of cell service map for British Columbia and Alberta. So you can see most of the north, or most of the west coast of the island rather, except for around Tofino, Ucluelet, and most of the rest of the coast is not served well by cell service. So VHF radios, of course, I mean, we always carry that, and it does provide emergency call out capability. It's just limited, and so the idea of a satellite communicator is to have two-way messaging and another way to call for help if you need it. So these are images of some satellite communicator options that exist today. This is the one I'm pointing at, if you can see my mouse there, is similar to the one we bought, but it's the newer version. The one we bought, of course, isn't made anymore, but that's a sort of a larger scale, as you can see. The one to the left is the one Tony has, the Inreach Mini, named obviously because it's a nice, tidy little size there. The Spot in the middle, something called Bivy, which I did not know about, Bivy Stick, and one called Somewhere. Very cool name. So that's a kind of a quick picture, but there's this, I came across this, and I hope this works, this article. Yeah. So if you go to, I guess it's Outdoor Gear Lab, and they do reviews. This was probably the most helpful article that I found. And if you're seriously considering it, I do recommend that you go through it. It's up to date, as you see, 2021. And these guys went through a bunch of stuff. So they have rated the products, as you can see. They show their costs, but that's the device cost. And they give you some pros and cons, bottom line, so forth. But more than that, then they'll go into detail on each one of them. So the Mini actually comes out with the best overall score, and they'll go into detail on that. Then there's also one for a very high score for this Bivy Stick Blue, which is the latest version of that Bivy thing. And I don't actually know where you'd buy that in Canada, but it's presumably available somewhere. I just didn't have time to track it down. Bang for the buck Somewhere is well reviewed as well for coverage. And then we get into different things. So this one is actually a PLB, a personal locator beacon, which is not a satellite communicator like I'm going to focus on, but they included it in this one. It basically is just a call for help device. And this is another different kind of device. So anyway, I won't go through it all. I just wanted to sort of recommend this article to you, and you can see the, the link there, or you would find it if you went around, if you go through looking for things like this. This is a good sort of array of them. There is also another review. I couldn't resist including this. It's a video review by, I kid you not, Adventure Alan. Who knew, that I was having such a lot of fun. But this guy is an outdoors guy, and he's done a review of these ones that you see in front of you. And he talks and, he'll sort of hold them up and talk about, he's a hiker mostly. So if you want to go to YouTube there, you can find Adventure Alan talking about these three. Zoleo, which is on the left, it wasn't in the previous picture, but it isn't a current device, and it is available in Canada. And the Garmin Mini and the Somewhere, those are the ones that he looks at. So I just wanted to kind of give you a survey of those as a way of saying, look, there's a few things out there. If you are really interested in these, we're going to talk about our experience, which is between Tony and I is limited to what's now owned by Garmin, the Inreach, but there are other devices as well. And I did my own little kind of summary of these because in a way it's, the helpful part is to see that there are many similarities. So I've gone down Garmin, Inreach, Zoleo, Bivy Stick Blue, Somewhere, and Spot X. And you'll see here, when I say full service, I mean you can do SOS, two-way messaging, and also tracking. That's leaving GPS, footprints somewhere, usually on a website page that's assigned to you. And so you can read through these. You see that the Inreach, it does those things, and it uses a phone to pair. You pair it using Bluetooth with your smartphone. So you're working from that. So the size of the device is sort of immaterial. You're using your phone basically. Zoleo does not do tracking, does the other things quite well, but no tracking. So something to keep in mind. Baby Stick Blue does it all. And Somewhere does it all. And Spot X now is a new version of the Spot, which has been around for a while, but their latest one also is full service. One of the things you may notice if you study this a bit is that only the Spot at the bottom uses the Global Star network. So there are different satellite networks up there, which are commercial, and you rent space on them, I guess, if you're using them. And all of the others here, as you can see, are using the Iridium satellite network. I do think that it's generally acknowledged that for commercial purposes like this, the Iridium satellite network has the best worldwide coverage. And these are, satellites in geosynchronous orbit that cover the world. And so you need 2 or 3 of them to have a good fix on your location and have good communication. And so it's very important that you have a good network. Most of them seem to go with Iridium, and that's what we're used to using with the Inreach. So those are device options. But when you come around to talking about costs, so this is kind of the how much side of things, right? It is complicated. It's also expensive, let's be clear. But then what we're doing, if you're out there in a very much remote area, on the water, camping and so on, that is a risky activity. And so, we're kind of worth it, I figure. So when you end up paying hundreds of dollars for something, you've probably already paid more than that for the equipment that you have with you. And maybe you should just think of it that way. The costs involve the device itself. Then there's an activation fee, and this depends on each device. They're all a bit different. There are then annual or monthly service plans, sometimes annual fees in addition to the annual or monthly plan. There could be suspension and resumption charges as well when you start and stop things, if you can do that. And then finally, your plan has some limits, and those limits might be giving a GPS location, or it might be a message, and they might have 100, let's say, in your monthly plan. And if you go over that, they'll charge you, 50 cents for the next message kind of thing. So you just have to be mindful of that and choose a plan that's you're gonna be able to live with. So the costs are kind of complicated, and honestly, until you have maybe settled on a device that works for you for what you want to do, then I would think just kind of leave the cost for now. If you are seriously considering it, get a device that seems to be what is going to do it for you, and then take a look closer at what the costs are. And we'll tell you what our experience is with the Garmin devices. So this is the one that the Catfish guys, Rob and David and I bought in 2014 when we went to Alaska. It looks just like that on the left. And this one they don't sell anymore. They upgraded it, of course, and so this is an old model, but it's still humming along. I have a bit of tape on it because the cover to the charging port kind of pulled away at one point, so I keep it taped up. But apart from that, it's working fine. This is the plan I have, or we have, the Catfish Group's device. And I have to say, it's not available anymore, even this whole plan that you're looking at. If you were to buy a Garmin Inreach now, which would look a little different than this, either a big one, which is orange probably and does a few more things, or Tony's Garmin Mini, then you would be dealing with Garmin Central. I guess they're a big company based in the States, but a worldwide company, and their pricing is a bit different. What we do, I just thought this might be interesting from the experience we've had. What we tend to do is use, I'm trying to point out this one here, Trailblazer, which for a month that we do use the service, it might be $60 a month. And you can see for that, we get 250 texts or basic forecasts, unlimited tracks, and of course, preset and SOS messages. So this is sort of their menu of what you get for that, $60. When we're not using it, like I'm not using it right now, and most of the year it's not being used, you can suspend it. Doesn't cost anything for me to suspend it. Doesn't cost anything to resume it, but I have to resume into a plan, and then I'm paying for that. I do pay a suspension fee, which is right now, it is, I think, $2 a month. And I believe it's going up to $3 a month. I'm not entirely sure about that, but they just sent a note out saying it was going to go up a bit. But that's pretty cheap, you know, sort of a cup of coffee. And what it does is they keep your data then on the site that you'll see later that they've set up for us. And so you can use that online even when you're not actively using the device. So I've just got a few notes there, as you can see. This one hasn't been available since 2017, those plans as well. We've had it for, I guess, 7 years now, used it many times. And you can see the costs there that we experience.
Alan, Dave has asked a question. He says, he asked if the units are waterproof.
Yes, they are. They don't float though. And I wouldn't trust them too far underwater. That they're supposed to have, you know, the IP something or other. I basically keep mine in a Pelican case, completely dry, and it's worked for me. It's meant to, I guess, if it's raining, you know, if your hands are wet, if it's wet, they're not really meant to be underwater. But yeah, they expect to be, they expect that you're out in the weather. So I think all of these devices are kind of weatherproof. Maybe I should stop. I don't know how I go back on my show here. Maybe I can do it that way. Yeah. Maybe I should just stop and see if anybody has any questions about this, because we're going to move on to the mini, and then we have some other material. Any questions about this particular device? It's a bit of a downer that you can't get it anymore, because it was pretty good, but as things go, Delorme was a small company. It was bought out by Garmin, and of course they've taken it into a whole new world of you know, activities, and basically have upped the fees somewhat. So this is the.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
This was no longer available as of 2017. Right. So if one was wanting to get kind of a current service, current arrangement, you'd contact Garmin directly, a Garmin retailer.
Yeah, sure. London Drugs, you know, a lot of people carry them, and you can get one that's about this size. They call it the Explorer now, and I think it's orange, and it has a few more bells and whistles. Or there's the Garmin Inreach Mini, which Tony will talk about, and which I'll show you next. So they're certainly available. Is that Don?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Certainly available, Don.
Yeah. Super. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the Inreach Mini. I guess I already said that they're, so the pricing is different, as you see from the last slide. This is the one that Tony has, and he'll talk some more about it, but just to give you a quick overview, prices have gone up. There's some different charges. But again, the basic idea, you can suspend it when you're not using it. Doesn't cost much per month. And when you need it, you get a plan, and you get a plan that's going to work for you. Probably a recreation or an expedition plan. And then you go from there. Okay, so what I wanted to do next was to just show you kind of some of the functionality of the Inreach device. Now, this will be the same really for Tony's device as for my own, so it might look a little different, but they do the same kinds of things. So with the, we've used this since 2014, as I say. We have an account with Inreach, and this is the sort of page of that account, as you can see. So look at this, we've sent, 7,000 tracking points and all that. This is the total that we've ever done. And so we've made a lot of use of it, and it's been, I think, a good use. One of the really valuable things you can do with these devices and as you go back to that other list, not all of them do this, the tracking, but tracking I would recommend highly, is it sets up a page, Garmin calls it the map share page, Inreach map share. It's basically available to you online in the cloud, and it puts your GPS, footprints down on that if you choose to do that with your device as you travel along. So this is kind of the address for it. And you can see this is from, hey Rob, this is from our trip last fall that we took around the North Brooks, or north of the Brooks. And so you might recognize some of that. And I hope this comes up. Yeah, so I think this is now live in it, and I can view all tracks. So just to give you an idea, what you're looking at is the entrance to Quatsino Sound here. And we started at Winter Harbor and paddled out. That's what the tracks show. The straight line here is us going out. This one, which has a stop here, was on our way back. So we just had the Inreach running, and it left these, I think we were doing it every 10 minutes maybe. And it dropped these points, which are the little circles. And then it connects them with a straight line, which sometimes goes through points of land. So clearly it didn't do that. You paddled around the land probably, but it doesn't know that. It just connects the dots. But what it does is people at home can then, you leave them this address, URL, and they can go in and find out, oh, this is where they got to today and what's going on. And then I mentioned about messages. So just to give you an example, and people who've been in this area will know Heater Point. Oh yeah, I should choose a different message maybe. We end up, okay. Well, this is called camel font. This style of writing, I bet you that, I don't know who did this. Anyway, we take turns putting the messages out. And so camel font is a way of maximizing the value you get from characters. You can only send 140 characters or something with these messages. It's kind of like Twitter, I guess. And so to make it, they count spaces and punctuation and everything. So you just sort of do away with all that. You just capitalize the first letter of each word. And then people at home have to somehow decrypt this, to figure out what it says. But anyway, you can see Robin Allen paddled Keith River, etc. Fred, Robert, etc. stayed home. So this is kind of what happened to us that day. That message would be located where we sent it and would be available to people who are following your paddle. So it's kind of reassuring for them to have some sense of what's going on. If you're out there on the coast and they're at home and wondering, heard a big storm was coming through, I hope they're okay, and so on. This particular trip, Rob and I ended up going down here to Crabapple Islet's gorgeous place on the North Brooks, and doing some paddling around there. The other guys, because there was an injury, it happened on shore, fall, and then they stayed up here and did some paddling around. We got back together and carried on a couple days later. But that was all provided, that information was all provided back to people at home. And so basically you set this up in advance. You can see the trip plan here, kayaking, camping, on the water, off the water. And so it's reassuring. That's the tracking on MapShare. Oh yeah, I guess I did a different one. Okay, that's a better message to read. So Rob and Alan at Crabapple, fabulous weather, hike 2 lagoons, and so on. So you just get to say kind of what's happening with your day in the message. You can connect your Inreach map share with Facebook, which we have done on occasion, just because some people follow Facebook. I actually don't do Facebook, but Katrina does, as you see. So we've used that, or Twitter. So it's kind of savvy with other social media if you wanted to make your travels known more broadly. So that's kind of what happens generally with the Garmin devices. And then we wanted to, because this one that you see very tidily in the fellow's palm of his hand here is the one that's available now. This is the one that Tony has used. He's real quick with it as well, kind of clicking his way through menus and stuff. So it obviously works well. And before he gets started, I think I can bring this up. It's kind of a cool little like 1 minute video. It's a promotional video that Garmin has. That's kind of cool, eh? Okay, Tony, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Yes, I guess I've had mine a couple of years now, and I've been very happy with it, other than them raising the price, which they did just a few months ago. They sent me an email saying it's rising from $30 to $50 per year. And as like Alan said, it helps support keeping your web data, like your messages and tracks you've sent. But that's fine, I can understand that. And yes, as Alan mentioned, we can pair it to our phone running the EarthMate app. And it's much easier to type messages using your phone's keyboard than the select one letter at a time on the unit, of course. And yep, I sent emails. You can send emails, text messages, and get the weather forecast. There's, normal forecast and advanced forecasts. And I guess up until last year, I was actually using the phone to get the forecast. It's printed out real nice on the EarthMate app. But of course, you're using phone power, and you want to keep that as long as you can. But you can use the clicks and the up and down buttons and the back button and the OK button to navigate through the menu pretty fast. And I found, last year on the trip, that's what I did instead of starting the phone up. And I had no problem with it. So, and you can save your battery on your phone if you want to use it for other things.
These things don't take much power, do they?
No, I would say I think I was using about 9% per day. If I sort of averaged it out, 9 or 10% of the battery per day. So that's about, 8 to 10 days of use without recharging, which is pretty great.
Yes. Yeah.
When I first bought the unit, I noticed that you could not replace the battery. It's one of these lithium, right, batteries and non-replaceable. And the first thing I thought was, uh-oh, is it going to only last a couple of years like our phones do, right, before we notice a difference? But that does not seem to be what's happening. They seem to use a really good battery, and most people don't use it 12 months of the year. So the batteries they did install are really, really good so far. Now, I think Elizabeth has had hers many, many years, and it's just like Alan, it's probably 7 to 10 years old, and it's still going good. And I would think you would have to send it back to Garmin to get the battery replaced, because like these devices can save your life, right? And they have to be sealed very accurately with whatever type of O-ring or sealing they have, right? And they have to be torqued just right? you can't be in the water in the middle of nowhere and go to press your SOS and have it not work because you changed the battery and that you didn't seal it right. So I can understand that totally. Now, let's see, to get the marine forecasts, yeah, you pair it with the EarthMate app, that's right. And then in the app, you can actually, there's a map, I think it's the world map actually, and you can zoom in on where you are and actually tap the screen, and that will be the location you will get your weather forecast from. And every time you tap, every time you do this, you get a different, you actually get the same name, and then you just rename it to where you are. And then you can bring it up in a menu later on if you want to recall that area's weather forecast, which is really handy. So, yeah, and I charged the unit twice. Like I said, I think I got 7 or 8 days per charge last trip. And I charged it, but I don't, yeah, I charged it once and I was going to recharge it twice. And I think I did, but I didn't really have to, just in case something, you know, I needed it for longer. But it's, yeah, like we said, it's got a great battery life. And I was only using it on the water for say like 5 hours, depending on how many hours per day we paddled. And then at night or in the morning for the weather forecasts. And to keep the Inreach Mini recharged, I used a couple of Anchor 20,000 milliamp hour battery chargers. That brand, I'm not pushing that brand, but their customer service has been really good. And in case you have problems, they take care of you. So I think Alan is the guy who told me years ago to go with them, and I've been very happy with it. Now, getting your weather forecast, if you're on your beach, right, at night, say you want to get the forecast for tomorrow, where you're located on the beach can determine how fast you're going to get your forecast. If you're just sitting near your tent near the forest, you probably are not in the best location. It's best to say move halfway out the beach or maybe even right to the water and then maybe walk along it, wait a few minutes. So it's very, it depends where you're located, totally. And like I said, it can be from 5 minutes to 20 minutes before you get your forecast. They do give you a little audible indication when your request for the weather forecast has been sent to the satellite. It makes a little beep, like a low to a high frequency tone. And then when the unit actually receives it back, it's got like a little ringtone, like a phone. So yeah, it seems to work good.
They've been using dark sky, right? As the weather.
That's right. And that only lasts until the end of this year. And then they have to choose somebody else because Apple bought dark sky. So we'll see what they come up with. I haven't heard any rumors yet, but time is running out for them. And oh yes, how do I keep it waterproof? I have a see-through waterproof bag, which has a magnetic clip on the top. And it seems to work pretty well. But like I said, any electronics in a sealed bag is, you got to be very careful how many hours it's in the sun, because I've heard of electronics actually not working after being in the bag for hours and just overheating. So it might be best to keep it under the deck maybe, or covered. Just something to consider for any electronic gear. And the accuracy of the weather forecasting. Yeah, I remember on our last trip last year, we were weathered in for like 4 days at Top Knot Point. And of course, every day we're checking the weather forecast. And we did notice that the dark sky report was very accurate compared to what we were actually seeing in front of us on the water. Typically, Environment Canada would say like 20, 25 knots, but then dark sky would say 8 to 10, and we'd look out and yeah, it's about 8 to 10. So yeah, I was really, really pleased with the accuracy. And of course, when we had real storms, they would both give us pretty accurate results, and we'd just stay on the beach. So yeah, overall, I'm very happy with it, and I can understand them raising the price. But that just goes along with the security of being able to be rescued at any time. I think that's all I wanted to say, Alan.
Okay, great. So yeah, that took us through what I wanted to say as well. It's just another photo of paddling. I think this is in the new chatlet's heading down outside Nootka or something. Yeah, so the ways that we've used it, I mean, Tony was talking about Top Knot, North Brooks. You probably don't need a device like this if you're in a more civilized area on the east coast of the island. You know, it wouldn't be that useful, but because you've got good cell service generally. But out on the west coast, this will work and cell service will. So we wanted to just open it up, and we can come back to, I'll stop the sharing and come back to this people view and just ask, and maybe if other people have experiences. So Rob, you've had experiences I haven't had too. Anybody wants to share something about what's worked for you? We're trying to, you know, give some good advice here about how to stay safe out there and how to keep people at home well informed as well.
Sheldon, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Alan, there's a couple of comments in the chat. One from Gary Weeks saying, from using satellite phones, it is dependent on satellites moving overhead. Sometimes you have to wait for a satellite to move from behind a mountain. Just make sure you're clear of the trees. Good comment. And then Jim has a question. He said, for any of the units, do you know how the SOS signal is directed compared to a PLB? I understand PLB can take up to a few hours to reach the JRCC.
What's PLB and what's JRCC?
Yeah, I was gonna say it is.
Actually,
That's the Joint Rescue Coordination Center here in Victoria. It's part of the Department of National Defense. So they're the ones that send the Coast Guard out to get you. I do know that the system that we have here with Inreach Garmin goes through Houston. Somebody told. So there is a call center worldwide established in Houston. And basically the information that you have on your device that you've lodged with them and that you have, they can track your device, then they will send that to the nearest response unit, which here in Victoria would be the JRCC. How long that takes, I don't know. I've never used it, but hours sounds way too long to me.
Yeah, this is Raoul here. Yeah, I've heard it taking 2 hours to get emergency help out. And so one of the things I've done with mine is the emergency contact. When you press the SOS, if that ever happens, it goes to Houston, Texas, and it also goes to your emergency contacts on the Garmin, so you can set it up. So what I did with my emergency contacts is gave them a trip plan, and if you hear an SOS and our GPS, please do this. So it was a double thingy. So I think that's important, is to understand what happens when you press the SOS, and don't count on the people in Texas getting to you very fast, because they have to call the service in Canada or wherever you're at, and then that's got to get out to you. But if you have a contact, somebody at home, and they know what to do, that can come a lot quicker because they have the GPS coordinates.
Right.
How does that, Sheldon, how does that compare with pressing the panic button or the SOS button on your radio?
So Tony's holding up a PLB there. I don't know if you saw
yeah,
that.
That's the ACR rescue link. This one floats, and this is a use once only, right? Only one button, only to save your life. And it has batteries that last about 5 years also, and it has to be sent back for replacement. But I think they charge you about the same price as a new one. So if you ever think of getting these, they're only about a 5-year lifespan.
What about the red button on your radio?
Yeah, that will go to Coast Guard if you have good contact. You know, there are places where the contact on VHF is not great, but hopefully you can call them and you explain where you are. If you have a radio that will give them your GPS, that's better, obviously. but that's going to be immediate voice contact.
Yeah. So thanks. So it's fantastic life insurance. It really is great life insurance on the West Coast. That's how I look at it. So I only paddle on the West Coast with the buddies that have one. I don't have one right now, but Gord Allen, who I paddle with regularly, so he's got a mini like Tony. And it's just fantastic. And I have a couple of questions. First of all, the plan that we shared, it cost, I think, 10 or 15 cents every tracking point. So we didn't track all the points because that adds up to a fair bit of money every 10 minutes. And so we didn't have it on the water. And as a side effect, the battery lasts almost forever. And we were out on a 3-week trip last year, and I don't think Gord charged it, or maybe he did only out of security, but didn't need to, using it, just turning on in the morning and evening. The question I have is with regard to weather. I sort of asked Alan that a bit last week, and this is for Alan and Tony. Our weather woman is my wife, Cheryl, who sends us the weather report from whichever of Alan's favorite apps you want in code, NW, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And it takes about a message. And we get the weather report from Cheryl and for the day. And also for the next, day or two to know if we're going to make a 6-mile crossing the next day or things like that. How does and it's very easy to read, and Cheryl is really good at it. And I will note that she gets up early in the morning, and the 5 a.m. weather reports. Tony and Alan, how easy is it for the weather reporting with the present system that you have compared to what we're doing in terms of a day, 2 days later, and all that?
Alan, this is Rob. I'll just say in terms of having somebody at home sending you weather reports, we've had my wife Lisa do that, and the same as this other gentleman said, it comes in right away. You've also checked the dark sky, which what I remember was we'd just turn it on and have a look, and it would come in pretty quick.
Yeah.
From being somebody at home who has been tracking you guys, like I'll see, well, what are they doing now? And I'll turn on the computer and it'll say, oh, it's 12:30 or something. And I'll get a little dot that says at 12:20. I mean, it's almost instantaneous. Within just a very few minutes of that thing pinging, it shows up on my computer at home. So when you're talking about delays in response, that's more due to somebody in Houston having to make a phone call to somebody in Canada and that person phoning somebody else. It isn't the slowness of the satellite communication. That's really quick. And just in general, going back to many years ago when I had a rented satellite phone before these communicators were around, and also using the communicators, what the companies tell you is you need a 50-foot diameter of clear sky over your head. So if you've got your tent under a tree, it might not work. It might, but generally when we would take turns sending messages home, we'd sit wherever and type the message. Then I'd get up and walk towards the beach, and 99% of the time, by the time I got to the water edge, the message would have gone. You hear it beep. So you just need a little bit of clear sky, and most of the time they're really quick. And sometimes they would even work. I'd be sending a message inside my tent in the forest, and it would just happen to catch on and go. But in general, a little bit of open sky and away they go.
Sometimes we found even with the open sky, it would take quite a while for the message to go off or to get a return message and I don't know if you've had that issue, although most of the time it did go off, Robert, as you said. Sometimes it just would take a while.
Yeah, I mean, a while would be like 5 minutes in my
More
experience.
than that.
Yeah,
A lot
I
more
don't,
than that. I don't know.
I
why.
don't recall ever having it take more than 5 minutes to send anything. But
To receive for Cheryl to get the message we're here, had a great day, you know, one of the standard, you know, 3 standard messages you get for free. And
Right.
oh, just to say, even though we don't track everything, as soon as we get on shore and send a message, as soon as we get on shore and send a message at home, they could see exactly where you are.
Or Sheldon, my morning message board wouldn't receive it.
Yeah, we wouldn't receive Cheryl's morning weather reports sometimes. And we'd have to use Environment Canada, and as Tony said, subtract 10.
And then you get it late. I would have sent it, but you didn't get it.
Well, I guess there's different experience. I mean, I can't recall being frustrated waiting for a message. In terms of the weather reports, as we've been saying, I think the dark sky that they have used for the last several years has been, I think, relatively accurate. I compare it to predict wind is sort of my favorite one down here, and it's close. It's very much like that in terms of its generally the accuracy it has, but there's no perfect weather forecasting thing, and so you're going to do much better than Environment Canada's sort of prediction for 10 miles offshore, which is sort of where they're concerned about. You're going to have a near shore forecast, but it may not be perfect. I wanted to say that, and Tony would maybe remember, does it give you 5 days, Tony? Or I can't remember when you call up a weather forecast, it gives you several days at once, right?
Yeah, that's right. And then that's the basic marine. Then you could choose the advanced marine forecast, and it gives you more days. And I think it splits it down into hourly.
Oh yeah.
Where the basic may be every 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
And so do you go with the advanced marine? Is it worth the extra cost, or do you go with the basic?
Well, I was using the advanced initially, but then I switched to the basic when I was out there, and it was good enough for me. Yeah, I wouldn't pay for the advanced right now.
So when you say pay for the events, there's an additional charge. Maybe it's 25 cents, 50 cents, something like that each time.
Yeah, it might be $1 more or something. Yeah.
But the plan that we have, Alan, we get the weather forecasts and the unlimited tracking, and
that's right.
And if there's 4 or 5 or 6 of us out there, you split that cost up, and it's really just about free.
Yeah. I mean, the guys are always asking me, well, what do I owe you for the Inreach? So I can't really think that you owe me anything, because so we paid $60 for the month, but we're out here for a week. So what's a quarter of 60? And then there's 6 of us. All right, buy me a coffee and we're square. I mean, it doesn't really add up. And that's a plan that has unlimited tracking, and I think 250 messages, if I recall. We never send that many. I mean, we send maybe 1 or possibly 2 a day, but it's nice to have the flexibility to send more. So I get a bit, profligate with the weather forecast. Let's call up another one. It just costs a message to get the basic one. Why not get more information, But it's always a bit of a guessing game. Like, depending where you are, what you see may not be what's around the corner at all. It was one, famous time that we ended up getting helicoptered back from the South Brooks to our cars, and Rob there and Lisa at home kept sending us predict wind forecasts for Solander Island, and they were horrible. I don't think it went below 20 knots for a week or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were grateful to have that degree of accuracy, and we did not paddle. We just decided, okay, let's keep going south. It's way nicer down here. But the weather forecast we were getting that was just looking at what we could see looked fine, but we were on the wrong side to see what they could see at home with a better program and access to the internet and so forth. So the weather is an important consideration. I would say the messaging, for me anyway, in our group, has been important. I know my wife has appreciated it. She hates that camel font, by the way. Not supposed to use it anymore. It's like code. She'd speak English, and so you just send another message if it's too long. But anyway, so the messaging, and then we didn't mention it, and I've only done it once, but you can call Inreach to Inreach. Elizabeth Purdon, I don't know if she's on the call, but she and Bob were going around the island, whole island, at a time that we were, group was in the Chatlets, I think, okay, Rob? And we were able to contact them. You know, I had Elizabeth's, you kind of have like an email address sort of thing, and you can connect and connect back. So that's kind of cool. You're doing it via satellite. You don't have cell service, but you can do that. I think that little promo, slick little promo there showed you that, you know, somebody at camp and the guy running up the mountain or something like that. And I don't know to what extent, you know, like hikers, they seem to wear them on the outside, like you have to have this thing in full view. My experience with carrying it, I have this Pelican case, you know, it's pretty watertight. It'll definitely float. I lash it to the back of my seat inside the cockpit. I kind of put it there right where I know where it is, you know, and sort of tie it on in case I ever go over, which I haven't done. But inside the cockpit, it records everything. We get every single GPS, and again, we do the every 10 minutes, you know, because we got all these, you know, unlimited tracking points anyway. So I would say it's worth it. And it does seem to be able to, on the water, you know, you've got the best view of the sky you could ever have. So anyway, those are the points I was thinking about. Any other experience or any other questions for people who are thinking about getting into one of these?
So Alan, can I just move back to that previous question?
Yep.
About SOS and the VHF radio. If you are a hiker and you have a problem, then usually it's a broken leg or something like that. So you can rest and wait an hour or two for the rescue people to come. If you're on a sailboat and it's sinking, you're probably going into a dinghy or a life raft, so you've got time. If you're actually a kayaker, you could be in a very different situation where minutes, 5, 10, 15 minutes count as to whether you save a life or not. So the quickest way to get a rescue is through the VHF radio. And you mentioned the Coast Guard, but any boat in VHF range tuned to channel 16 will also hear that SOS or rescue message. And last year, it might have been last year or the year before, there was an incident off Haida Gwaii where some kayakers got into trouble off a headland. They put out a Mayday on the VHF radio, and I believe there was a boat there within 5 or 10 minutes, very, very quickly, that was close by to help them get some capsized kayakers out of the water. So if that had been an Inreach Mini, it could have been a completely different result at the end. So while the Inreach Mini is extremely valuable, I'm going to suggest don't discount the VHF radio to the closest powerboat or sailboat in the area.
Yeah,
Edgar, does the DSG, the radio, have any benefit in that case? Do the signals bounce?
The DSC radio will set off an alarm on any boat that has a DSC radio switched on within range. So everybody on the water should be listening to channel 16. Every sailboat or powerboat or fishing boat out there today will have a DSC radio. And if they're within range, then their alarm will go off. It's really loud, you can't miss it. And there's a latitude and longitude sent with that as well. The other benefit is the DSC signal is about 20% more range than just a voice signal. So it goes a little bit further as well.
So it makes you think about a DSC radio then, even though the battery is usage is twice the amount.
I take a DSC when I'm out on the West Coast in remote areas. When I'm paddling locally, I take a non-DSC because it's got better battery life. And, you know, if you get on the voice radio locally, you're going to get the closest ferry, the Coast Guard, any boat that's within range. There's lots of boats around. But on the West Coast, Actually, I take both. I take a DSC and I take just a regular VHF as well.
I totally agree. Totally agree. You get every fish boat. Anybody around will hear you immediately.
Mhm.
Why isn't she coming on that screen?
Well, that's good. I'm glad that came up, and I certainly would never recommend anybody going out without a VHF radio. So good to hear about the DSC too, and remember that. I see that there was a question about, can you put charts, download charts to the Inreach? I don't believe so. I mean, it's not a chart machine. It has access online to, you know, a sort of world map kind of thing, but it's not built like a GPS unit. Now, I say that as somebody with an early device that maybe they built that in subsequently to the Explorer or something, but that's my knowledge.
Not to my knowledge either. I've got the Explorer and I can't get charts on it.
Okay, any other questions or comments about this?
Oh, actually, I could mention they do go on sale once in a while on Amazon.ca. Normally they retail at $450, but quite a few times per year they go down to $400, and they were down to $350 for 2 days last December. So, and that was hard. That would be hard to find, but anyway, yeah, I would look around. I went into London Drugs one day and I saw a manager's special for $3.99. So. And I hadn't seen that anywhere else, so that's when I got mine. So if you're interested, just keep an eye out at different places.
There are lots of devices. If you look in the chat here, and maybe Tony, when Tony's recording this, so we can put it up, if we can kind of capture some of the information in the chat as well, that'd be good. Because somebody else is pointing out another device, a more sort of higher end GPS device that you can do, you know, download and get charts. Oh, yeah. It really depends what you're doing. You know, we don't want to be going out to the wilderness with an armload of electronics, but on the other hand, some of these things are so useful, you know, valuable to you that it's worth, you know, having a bit of extra cargo and keeping you safe if that's where you are. I agree very much with what Edgar was saying. You know, there are places where you paddle where the risk is much higher, and I can't remember where we were, Rob, on our Alaska trip, and we paddled for like 3 days and we saw not a soul, not an airplane, not a fish boat, not a person, zip. And we're like, whoa, did the world just end or something? But, you know, if you have a problem out there, you need remote communications pronto. So if that's where you're going, and that's where I love to go, then you need to have some electronic, and maybe take more than one for sure. I definitely have VHF. And then I guess we're recommending some sort of satellite communication is an excellent idea as well. Now, John Abercrombie hasn't said anything. John, I know you have a PLB. What's your experience with that? Has it been working?
I don't know if you can hear me okay. A PLB, I haven't ever used it and I hope I never will. It's a PLB is a one-use only thing, as Tony pointed out. And you push the button and that's it. So I carry that in my PFD, and I don't intend to use it, but it's there if I need it. I bought myself a Zoleo.
Oh yeah.
And I did a lot of research, as you can imagine. And the reason I picked the Zoleo is because it's by far the easiest for people at home to initiate contact with me when I'm camping. Yeah, because it has a phone number. So they can just text, pick up their cell phone and text to the phone number of my Zoleo and communicate that way. And if I want to communicate with, say, a company, a helicopter company, they could just text back and forth using that phone number. And it's always the same phone number. It's dedicated to my Zoleo unit. The Zoleo, you have to pay 3 months of your plan before you can suspend it. And then it's only a couple dollars a month. But that kind of surprise, I intend, because I bought the thing in November or something, I intended to just buy the thing and suspend the plan right away and then activate it in the summer whenever I was going on a trip. But I had to pay 3 months worth, I think, at $50 a month. And now I've been able to suspend it, and it'll just tick along, and I can activate it anytime I want. So
John,
that's
did you get that at Road Post? Where did you buy it?
I bought that from their website, I think.
Yeah.
Directly online.
Okay. I noticed that it's advertised by Road Post, which is the company I still pay for the Garmin Inreach that I have. Because they were kind of the Canadian outfit that I think started this up, and Garmin left them alone. But they do promote the Zoleo. It sounds like a good device.
Yeah, I have a Spot, which I've used. I'm not interested in tracking at all. I don't want people to be following me every 10 minutes. Every night I turn the Spot on and push the button and say, I'm okay, here's where I am. And the Zoleo will do that also. I don't have to turn on the phone to use that feature on the Zoleo. It's got just like the Spot, the simple Spot, not the messaging one. It's got a button that says I'm okay, and it'll do that on its own. And I've tested it at home, and it seems to work, and the texting seems to work, and off the back deck or down the block, it seems to be quick. So we'll see how it all works out in practice.
Somebody's saying Mech carries Zoleo. Well, so are there any other questions? Or anybody need to unburden themselves of satellite communicator experience? I guess we're agreeing that they're they're useful, they're expensive. There's a bit of a process, and it's not entirely clear what's the best thing out there, but some of us have had great success. So if you are planning a big trip or a trip in a remote area, it's definitely something to consider. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you participating. We're going to, I think that we've got this recorded, and we'll have it put up on the YouTube channel that Tony set up for us. So if you wanted to take a look at some of those things in more detail and research, John is, you might want to talk to John. He does serious research before he invests in something, but do some research for sure. It's complicated, and it's worth taking some time to figure out what's going on. Anyway, good night, everybody. Thank you for joining in. Happy
Good night, Alan. Thank you.
Thanks,
Enjoy the summer weather.
David just keeps telling me.
Thanks, Alan.